Welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of our flip lecture on copyright. And for part 2, what I would like to do is I would like to focus on the second questions that I posed earlier. And that is, what is meant now by fair use, especially as it relates to our use of materials in classrooms. And then I'd like to outline and hopefully explain a little bit better the 4 criteria that are a part of fair use. And those 4 criteria are usually the things that classroom teachers aren't aware of, okay? But now as future educators, you will be much more aware of them and hopefully apply them then to your own classroom or learning environment, okay? So where I would like to go first is kind of this whole idea of fair use. In a way, teachers have a ability to, we're always trying to come up with creative ways of doing things in our classrooms and bringing in materials that we need to use, and that's what we want to do. I want you to remember that copyright and fair use, to me, if it's that, is my glass half full or is it half empty? Am I excited about what I can use rather than what I can't use, okay? And so fair use gives us the legal ability to use some things, but we use those things within the constraints of the law, okay? So I think that's how I want you to think about it. But as it's stated exactly in the law, we can use things for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research, okay? It is not an infringement. But if you go on in that law, what it usually then says is that you have to follow the criteria, okay? And then that's where we get a little bogged down with copyright law. So just as a reminder, we can't use fair use as just an excuse to say, well, I'm a teacher, it's because of fair use, I can use anything that I want, okay? It's, I've listed some reasons that we always hear. Any use as long as it's done in school, it benefits the kids. I'm doing it for the kids. We do everything for the kids. And the best one in most use is, hey, I'm not making any money on it. We never try to do that in the classroom, right? So, for the most part. So, these are things that we just have to be careful of, okay? So, what does it look like? What I'd like to do is I'd like to clarify and hopefully give you a little bit more detail on what it's meant by these 4 criteria of fair use. The purpose and character of the use is number 1, okay? This one is typically very easy for us to meet in the classroom, okay? Basically what this means is, why am I using it? And then the character of use is defined usually as, is it educational or is it for commercial use? Commercial use would mean typically money. Educational use is, hey, I'm just trying to, again, I'm doing it for my kids. I'm making it a part of a learning opportunity for them. So it's easy, okay? Typically, if we're using anything in the classroom, it falls under that, it's an educational use, okay? So this criteria is usually met. The problem with it is teachers usually, we deal with that first criteria and we forget there's 3 more, okay? So you have to remember the next 3 as well. So the second one, this one is the most abstract in terms of definition. It's hard to get a handle on this one, okay? And it's called the nature of the copyrighted work. If you look at any readings about, copyright and what it looks like and how it's done and so forth, this one is probably the most I'm going to say nebulous. It's just hard to get your handle on the handle on it a little bit, but I'm going to just try to do it by illustrating it by a continuum, okay? And a continuum about, okay, on one side, it's like the nature of the material is very factual. It's very straightforward. It doesn't change. It's been there for, it's been long well established. You know, and every time we see it, we read it, it's the same, okay? That's like more likely you can copy something like that, okay? An example, this one is an easy example. Again, it's hard to give examples in this continuum because they're all a little bit different, but like the Declaration of Independence, okay? That's an archive. It's over 100 years old, so it's not like I can copy. You know, why would you ever want to copy the Declaration of Independence? But it's more likely that I can take excerpts from that because, you know, it's there and it's been there. It doesn't change, that kind of thing. Now, on the other continuum of the nature of this work is creativity, okay? So kind of factual, doesn't change, to this, on the other side, highly creative. It's something that, you know, for me to produce it myself is very difficult. You know, that's why we buy music from our, you know, music groups, individuals, artists, okay? Those kinds of things are on this other side of the continuum. They're just highly creative, and for me to duplicate would be literally copying what someone else has done, and then I don't really have any legal ability to take their work, okay, because it belongs to them. So it's kind of this individualistic creativity kinds of things. And then also get that on the creative side, if you put number one together with the purpose, you know, there's people that do creative work for educational purposes, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the stuff that we want to use that's creative, they're probably getting some money for it on the side as well, right? So again, you kind of balance these criteria with it. Okay, so that was my attempt to kind of help with this continuum of the nature of the work. Again, I invite you to just go out on the internet and maybe you can read more about that, but that's kind of how I tend to explain it. Number 3 is pretty straightforward, and this helps us a lot. And we'll be talking more about this specifically next week when I see you face to face. And it's all around, okay, now we've dealt with, is it educational? What's the nature of the material that I'm trying to use? Well, in fair use, we have guidelines that helps us on the amount to be copied in relationship to the work as a whole, okay? So there are actual limits to what we can use of the materials that we take, okay? So there are limits on pictures, there are limits on images, there are limits on video, music, you know, all those things, even printed text. Fair use includes guidelines on limits and the amount that you can copy of a work, of a whole considered body of work. So again, I'll get into more specifics with that next week as you kind of process this and think about it. The fourth one is, and this one again, I think 1 and 4 are easier for us as educators, the effect on the use upon the potential market for or the value of the copyrighted work. Okay, so again, this goes back to kind of commercial. Okay, am I going to do something with technology? I'm going to have my students make a little bird tails recording, and then I'm going to sell those, you know, for someone to look at. That would be like, no, I can't, obviously. Common sense, right? Common sense. So, but we do have to be careful because, again, as we think about these, how are they potentially, you know, we have fundraisers at schools, we have, you know, different things like that, that we're getting money maybe for our classroom, raising money. Well, we have to be careful what we're doing there and how we're doing it. I'm going to use a personal example to illustrate this one. My husband and I went to a wedding several years ago now, but within 5 years. And as do most weddings these days, usually the bride and groom give the guests some kind of a gift, which is great, you know. Sometimes it's a bag of candy, a chocolate, you know, some go as far as to give even a little wrapped gift or whatever. Well, at this wedding, all the guests were given a CD. And the CD was the bridegroom, all the attendants, which there were quite a few of them, so I'm going to say there were about 14 total, you know, between the two. They had picked a favorite song, their favorite song, and then the party had picked their favorite song to commemorate the couple, and they had burned the CD with all of these songs, and then put the CD, and that was the gift to the attendants, or the guests. Well, great, right? I mean, we leave there with a CD of really cool songs. You know they were popular, you know they were cool, but the problem with that, you guys, I was horrified because that is so breaking copyright. Yeah, all those people probably got their song legally, downloaded it from iTunes, 99 cents. Okay, here it is. Here's the digital. This is the one I want. You know, give it over here. The problem is there's 300 guests at this wedding, and we're all going home with a CD with 14 songs, and we didn't pay a dime. That's when you get the effect upon the potential market for copyrighted work. Okay? Now, what did I do? I just didn't take the CD. I didn't let my husband take the CD. He was kind of like, why not? No, we're not going to. That's, again, I'm sorry, but the ethics in me said no. But did I go up to them and say, this was so wrong, you shouldn't have been doing that? No. There's appropriate time, appropriate place, but I know for me that wasn't going to work, okay? So again, you kind of figure that out with how you work, but I think that's a good example. In our personal lives, it's a little bit trickier, you know. I know you probably have the same stories, and hopefully we'll share some of those stories, but it's like we just have to think about that. That set a horrible example for people that were there and took those CDs, that this is okay, because it clearly is not okay. Okay? So, with that, this is kind of a little mini lesson on fair use. Feel free to try to find other information on each of these if you want to. But I think when you think about using material now in your classroom, what you're thinking about is check 2, check 3, check 4. How does it fall? Sometimes it's very gray, and then that's when you have to make that ethical decision. So the next part 3, I'll see you in a minute or later, and you'll answer that question.